Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 9th, 2014 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a particular case must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Charchin?
Present.
Board Member Malikian?
Here.
Board Member Mardian?
Here.
Chairperson Palmer?
Here.
And Mr. Simonian is absent. The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on October 1st, 2014. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards.
I have none.
None were submitted. Which brings us to the review calendar and staff announcements. Tonight's agenda has 3 cases. The last case on tonight's agenda for 330 Wonderview Drive is being continued 2 weeks until the October 23rd Design Review Board date. I would need to actually have a motion for continuance and a roll call as well.
I'll make a motion to continue it.
I have a motion made by Board Member Mardian. I'm sorry, was that a second by Board Member Charchin? Okay. So in terms of a roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchin?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
And Chairperson Palmer?
Yes.
The motion passes to continue the case for 2 weeks. And that leaves us to tonight's agenda for 2 cases. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chairperson Palmer.
Okay. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting. Our first case is PDR 1407873-R, 3540 Buena Vista Avenue. And Ms. Toledo, if you please give us a synopsis.
Yes. Also, I'd like to put up on the board a couple more items before I start my presentation. I'd like to pass around the material board and the photos. And I'd like to put up one of the renderings.
Also have the same rendering board that the architect can refer to or the public.
If you recall, this project was before you back in June of this year, and at the time, the applicant, the board made a motion actually to return the project for redesign. So the project has returned with some modifications compared to the previous design. I have pinned up the old and the new plans are behind you, the new elevations and modified site plan and the new landscape plan and the floor plan. So the applicant is proposing to demolish the existing one-story single-family house and the garage, and they're proposing to construct a new two-story, 2,495 square foot single-family house and a new 460 square foot detached garage at the rear of the existing 6,500 square foot lot. What I'd like to do is, since you have your staff reports, we've read through the staff report in the past with all the details and the neighborhood fabric and the neighborhood characteristics, I'd like to just jump straight to the comments that the board had, if I may, and how those comments staff has concluded were addressed or not. Condition number 1 was to restudy the mass and scale of the house by addressing the following. Modify the site plan layout by transferring or reducing floor area on the second floor and proposing floor area on the first floor at the rear, and create more open space along the sides of the house, thereby providing massing relief. Based on that site plan that you've received, the transfer reduction of floor area from the second to the first floor at the rear was not successfully addressed. Staff continues to have concerns regarding the mass of the second floor. So staff recommends additional reduction or reconfiguration to address the board's original condition. Item 2 was to soften the boxy appearance by articulating the northerly and southerly sides of the house. The changes made to the house along the north and south sides are not enough to reduce that boxy appearance. Staff does recommend, once again, to further reduce the floor area on the second floor. Item 3 was to reduce the overall height of the house. The overall height was reduced by 9 inches from 27.3 to 26 feet, 6 inches. So overall, the mass and scale of the second floor continues to be an issue, as highlighted in your staff report. We do acknowledge that second floor was reduced from 1,271 square feet to 1,156 square feet on the second floor, and it was set back approximately 2 feet from the north and the south sides. The total reduction of 115 square feet and the setbacks along the sides are not substantial enough changes to reduce the bulk and the mass of the second floor. Item 2 was to restudy the window wall ratio and window proportions and openings. The window wall ratio and the proportions were revised. The revisions complement the overall style of the house, with the exception of the windows on the front porch, which are addressed in the staff report, and I'll go over it as I move along to the next item. Item number 3 was to restudy the overall design of the house to better reflect the craftsman style in the following areas. To restudy the front porch and proportions. The proportions at the front porch have not changed compared to the previous submittal. The front porch gable appears a bit compressed. The cross beam should rest on the columns for better design integration, and therefore staff does recommend for the board to clarify its goals for this purpose of the design. The next item was to restudy the proportions of the gables. The eave projections at the gables appear a bit exaggerated. In addition, the gables at the rear facade appear to be a bit high, or too high rather, and poorly proportioned. These issues are addressed again, as I continue reading along in the staff report. The next item was to restudy the sides of the house as noted above. As noted in the comments I just read, the changes made to the house, again, along the north and the south sides are not enough to reduce the boxy appearance, and therefore, again, once staff, again, is reiterating the fact that we recommend further reduction to the floor area on the second floor in order for the building to result in overall design improvement, including the roof design. Item 4, they have addressed the location of the mechanical equipment. It is at the rear by the garage. It is set back approximately, I believe, 6 feet from the rear property line. Item 5 was that all windows be recessed within the opening and constructed with a wood frame and sill, and the applicant has noted that on the window schedule, that they will be proposing block frame. The windows will include a wood sill and frame. Item 6 was that all windows have exterior grids. They've addressed that, and it is noted in the window schedule. They will have exterior grids. Item 7, a wood gate at the driveway should not be wrought iron. To use a wood gate at the driveway, not wrought iron. Again, they've addressed that. They do show a new wood gate at the driveway and also on the north side of the property. Item 8 was do not stucco existing or new site walls. They've made that notation that they will not stucco. The block wall is to remain. Item 9 was to clearly indicate the proposed window material in the window schedule. They have done that. The window schedule does indicate that all windows will be solid wood. Item 10 was to submit revised colored elevations that are consistent with material board samples as follows, including colors, materials, texture, and finish. They've addressed that. They have revised the colored elevation, and it does appear consistent with the material board. Item 11, revised garage interior dimensions. They've done that as well. The interior garage dimension do show the appropriate 25-foot turning radius to comply with code and the interior clearance of the garage as well. Item 12 was to submit a revised perspective showing the subject site in context with its adjacent properties. They have done that. They've provided a Photoshop rendering, as well as you also have the site plan that shows the location of the adjacent properties. And item 13 was to submit quarter-inch colored scale elevation for the garage, and they've done that as well. Additional staff comments. Staff recommends to use the previous window configuration for the front windows at the front porch. And item 2 was to reduce the projections of all roof eaves, which appear exaggerated. And item 3 is to redesign projecting roofs and gables at the rear facade, which appear too high and poorly proportioned.
But those 3 added conditions are in addition to the ones that were in response to the original board conditions. So.
And let the record show that we have received, once again, several emails or correspondence of neighbors or those in the neighborhood in opposition. We also received a letter from the Montrose Far Heights HOA, also in opposition. And we also received some letters in favor of the project, and those were submitted yesterday by the applicant. At this time, I conclude my presentation. If you have any questions for staff, I'm available.
Any questions?
No. No.
We've all received those letters and read them. So.
Yes, I have distributed all the copies. So like I said, I wanted the record to show that, because I mentioned that to all of those that sent me emails that I would forward those letters.
If we have no questions, then I'm going to open the hearing. Does the architect or the owner want to speak first? I have 2 of the owners and 1 for the architect. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Robert Thibodeau, and my address is 624 Venice Boulevard, Venice, California.
Don't mind. Yes, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, so when we came here in June, you guys were concerned about the massing of the building, and I think the story poles, showed some problem areas. So what we did was we moved the entire building back 5 feet because there's a difference with the required setback here and then but what the neighbors are built on, the building line of the neighbors. So before we had been building to the required setback, we slid the entire building back 5 feet. So that's showing this diagram here. So we slid the building back 5 feet and then further reduced that. We had already had the front porch designed, which is an additional 5 feet back from, then again, the neighbors' buildings, which set here, then we're another 5 feet back here. Then we're another 3 feet back at the second floor. This is to reduce the mass from the street. We had originally had a projection here. Took that projection off and we kept it flush with the rest of it. It made for a little less differentiation in the front, but it pulled the mass way back from the street, so the building would step further back. The original building also had a slightly simpler roof line where the gables ran end to end, and we modified the roof line to be a hipped roof type of roof, and that was actually at maybe a little bit of a suggestion of your design department here. And what that did was it lowered the height around the edges down to 22 feet, where 28 feet is allowable. So we're actually, at the peak, we're 1.5 feet under, but the peak is centered. And we're 1.5 feet under the height limit here. But at the edges that face the neighbors and the majority of the rest of the property, we're actually 6 feet under the height limit. So we feel we've done a really good job in pulling the mass down. Then in terms of stepping the mass back, we went around the building and we looked for spots on the second floor design where we could cut the square footage back. And so what we did was, this was that spot in the front I was talking about where we took the mass back to pull it back from the street. Snipped back a little extra all the way along the front. We pulled in the side, we pulled in the other side. We actually added a little bit of square footage downstairs to make up for some of the square footage we were losing upstairs, but there's an overall reduction in the project size of a little under 100 square feet, about 90 square feet. We reduced the entire project size. Then there were specific comments from the rear yard neighbors who I think are going to speak next. And they were concerned about the master bedroom facing rear, which was the owner's desire to have more quiet before. So they wanted the master bedroom to be in the back. And so what we did was we flipped the layout. I'm going to take this for a second. We flipped the layout on the second floor where now the master bedroom faces the front. And then the bathroom and the closet are in the back here. So that was in response to these neighbors. We took the design and we flip-flopped it. There was also a balcony originally in the back. So we removed the balcony because they had privacy concerns, and they might have too, I can't remember. And so we took the balcony off the back. We did put the balcony on the front where we had pulled the mass back, just to give it some differentiation. And you can see the areas have sort of cut back on the side, cut back here, and you can see sort of the reduction, the stepping back in the front. Oops, sorry about that. And the way the roof steps down. Then at the garage, we had also had a gable roof. So the peak of the roof had gone to both ends, which increased the height as seen from the neighbors. So we changed this to a hip roof design also so we could have a lower face. And then we also lowered the ceiling of the garage by a foot down to 8 feet, which is about as low as you're going to go. Because we had the flip, we also had to reorient windows and stuff like that. So that's all been done per what the rooms flip back and forth, using alignments to keep the head heights of the windows consistent and stuff like that. Obviously, window sizes change depending on what room you're talking about, whether you're talking about a bathroom or bedroom or living room. The window sizes are a little bit different. But we tried to use certain standard sizes and standard widths so there would be consistency throughout the house. Put the master, lowered, change. Oh, and then there were also criticisms from the rear yard neighbors about the plants, the plantings. We had a tree back here, we had a tree up here, and they didn't like the trees we had chosen. We had chosen California native trees. And so in response to that, we hired a local landscape designer, Guillaume and Lemon, and he's come up with a completely revised landscape plan. And we hope this is going to satisfy you guys that the project is compatible and that we've done our best to work with the comments of the board and make this a project that'll be a good addition to the neighborhood and a good one for my clients to live in. Thank you.
Could you turn completely around so we can look at the other side?
Yeah.
And are there any questions?
I think the model answered my question because your roof plan does not reflect what you're showing up there, especially when you look at the side elevations. You have the gable, but on the side it doesn't, that middle gable and everything is coming to it. I had a hard time with your roof plan. Here I see
This is
it.
the lower right one. This is the line of the roof going along. This is the chimney. This is consistent.
No, I'm talking about this peak in here. See if you have this straight. That's what your model shows. And it's going to be a little higher. So I think that's the model is more correct than your drawing. But let me ask you a question. Why did you do a hip roof in the garage versus gable?
Because the height of the garage was a big issue last time. So with the hipped roof, it keeps the the roof lower on the all four sides. When I go to a gable end roof on the garage, two sides are going to be high. It'll either be, you have to choose the two. So either this neighbor is going to get a high side, or these neighbors are going to get high sides. When I go to a hipped roof in the middle, then I can keep it low and consistently low all the way around.
But the height basically doesn't change because the slope is the same. It's just how you orient that gable. But that's
Well, you have a 12-foot point at the peak, but if the peak is in the center of the building, I don't think it affects the neighbors as much as if the peak is at the edge of the building.
What's the height requirement for a gable roof
For a
garage?
3 and 12, they can go up to 15 feet.
Right, yeah. Thanks.
Is there any reason you have a 10-foot floor plate in the bottom floor?
10-foot floor plate's kind of a desirable height for new build construction now for living room. It's not a particularly tall or short ceiling height. It's what clients would normally
You're 2
expect.
feet off the ground in addition to that, so that your plate's like 12 feet off the ground. So it was a preference, is what you're saying?
I actually have a diagram also of the height of the original building, which is a two-story building or a story-and-a-half building. This is the peak of the building that sits on the property right now. This is our peak. And really, actually, this black line is what you see in the front. So if you look at the difference, to see how the black line comes across and you've got the gable end. So if you look at what's there now, there is some, this is a new construction we're adding. We're not going backwards. But if you look at the difference between the profile of what you see now versus the profile of what you will see, it's gotten a little bit bigger, but not really actually all that much bigger.
Did you explore putting some of the square footage from the second floor on the first floor?
We did. We moved about 100 square feet downstairs, and we got the rooms really to a size that we felt was about as small as we could get because we want a 3-bedroom house.
Did you consider putting one of the bedrooms downstairs or something to expand that?
That was suggested by Jay, but they didn't feel that raising a family and putting one child downstairs while the master bedroom is upstairs was really, that was a lifestyle choice that they weren't ready to make at this time. And in some ways didn't feel that they should be asked to do that. But that was definitely brought up.
Any more questions?
Another question, madam.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. Let me get my train of thought again. I noticed you have different roof slopes. How is that going to work all around this roof, and especially the front? Because when you have this balcony and the roof cut with all these small edges, the slope is not matching with the rest of the house. It's going to be a technical issue or a problem when you construct this. The other thing, if you lift this,
The slopes are actually consistent throughout the house.
I don't see it on the roof plan. And the other question I had, can you go back to that other diagram where how you push the building back? Because we suggested, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, is that to push the building back to create that average street front setback, and in addition to that, we wanted the second floor to be further setback. Is that significantly? So, if I understand this plan correctly, the only thing you've done is push the building back 5 feet and a little bit in the back. Is that basically it?
No, that's incorrect. Actually, yeah, we have the front of the building setback 5
Okay,
to the front of the porch. That's
Right.
consistent with the line of the
correct,
neighbors.
okay.
We have the front of our building.
Robert, could you just step into the microphone? Thank you.
We have the front of the front porch setback to be consistent with the neighbors.
Correct, okay.
So that's 5 feet already from the required setback.
Okay.
We have the front wall of the building. So
Yeah, your porch
this wall is set back an additional 5 feet. And this wall set back an additional 3 feet from this wall. So we have the required front yard setbacks up here. We have 5 feet additional, another 5 feet, so we're at 10 feet beyond the required front setback for the face of the building. And we have another 3, so we're at 13 feet beyond what technically code would allow you to build straight up here.
I
13.
understand that.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Any other questions?
I just want to understand, there's about 17 conditions here. We left the last meeting with, I think it was 14, 3 was added. And my question to you is, have you had a chance to have any dialogue with the staff and go over these conditions? Because majority of them hasn't been addressed. So I'm just trying to understand, I mean, staff
I think
is
we've
saying-
addressed every condition on that list.
So you think it was, and staff doesn't think it is?
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
I actually think you've got a problem with the staff, but
Well played.
Any other questions? Thank you.
thanks.
Thomas Hine?
Hey, the owner of the property. I mean, when I started off this
I'm his
project,
wife.
my wife Nicole, but when we started off this project, we kind of just wanted to add on to the existing house. I didn't really want to go through all the headache of building from scratch. But when we got into the project and we talked to engineers, the foundation would have needed to be completely redone. It was a no-win situation with cost, so that's why we started doing this, and we talked to engineers. And when I talked to all the architects and engineers, I told them I wanted a craftsman house that fit the neighborhood, but I wanted to maintain my backyard, which, I think is somewhat reasonable, and that's why I didn't really want to add something to the back of the house that would cut into my backyard that much. And I figured my neighbor, Lindy, probably would rather look at a yard than look at more house on her end. So just trying to be considerate of her. And, we had a meeting about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, where we invited all the neighbors that had complaints originally at the first board meeting to come and talk to us face-to-face about those issues they had. And only, I think, 5 people showed up, and 4 of them were left satisfied with the modifications we had made to the original house. We have
5 of them.
Or,
5,
yeah.
yeah.
We have the.
We have a few letters. They were emailed to you.
Do we have all those letters?
Yeah. It'll take 5 minutes to read them.
You only have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay.
so-
I'll read them in 2. So this is from our dear sweet neighbor, Lindy. She wasn't able to make it this evening. This week, I met the architect and contractor for the proposed demolition of the current house and construction of the new home. There was a model made which made the design easy to see. Changes from the previous design were pointed out to the guests assembled. Questions were asked and answered to my satisfaction. Objections I had previously of height and overall size were overcome in the new design. This charming house has sat on the lot for many years, but its foundation is now cracked and no longer earthquake safe. And the home, while distinctive, does not meet the needs of 21st century families. A new house in Spar Heights in the Craftsman style will be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. That's from our immediate neighbor, who's also our friend. This is from Mr. and Mr. Dave Goldsby, who came to support us. Thank you again. We would like to express our written approval on behalf of your design of the proposed build-out of your 3540 Buena Vista property. We appreciated that you considered the Spar Heights community's concerns expressed previously at the Design Review Board and made the changes that makes your proposed home more in tone with the neighborhood. We respected the fact you invited and included us and those in attendance to your home on September 30th to review your project manager and architect's redesign. We plan on attending the October 9th, 2014 meeting at the Design Review Board for your support. Sincerely, Mr. and Mrs. David Goldsby. Terrence and Jennifer Lee are getting some landscaping done, so they weren't able to make it tonight. We met Mr. and Mrs. Hines and their architect recently at their home to find out exactly what was planned for this property. We saw the updated plans and model of the project. This, along with the story poles, gave us a good idea of what the finished project would look like. Based on the information, we feel the owners are taking great care to make the home fit into the neighborhood and that it will blend in with the surrounding homes. Therefore, we have no objections to the project going forward. We would also like to thank the Design Review Board for working to protect our neighborhoods from rampant mansionization that we see in other areas. Sincerely, Terrence and Jennifer Lee.
Thank you.
Any questions or?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth Lawler?
Thank you. I'm the neighbor directly behind you.
Could you give your address?
3541 Downing Avenue.
Thank you.
My husband and I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's 1,500 square feet, and it is a 1-story house with a good-sized backyard. My neighbor also has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's larger than my house. It's 1,700 square feet, but it's a 1-story house as well. My other neighbor has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's larger yet at 1,800 square feet, also a 1-story house. Contemporary, new, and functional design doesn't have to be massive to work. It seems to me the owner and his architect should be able to find a way to have his desired number of bedrooms and bathrooms, even if the second floor size is decreased, as it should be, to fit within the guidelines of the North Glendale Community Plan. I request the Design Review Board return this plan for redesign. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant Michaels?
Good evening. I'm president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. We commented on this project originally and requested the additional noticing of this project to encourage greater participation. We believe that while improvements have been made to the project remains incompatible with the Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. The mass and scale of the proposed design is little changed and still excessive. We do not believe the project has met the conditions of the first hearing in regards to mass and scale neighborhood compatibility. We have concerns with the larger number of conditions that remain to be addressed by the board and the recommendations of the staff. While we are confident in the ability of the staff to execute conditions placed upon a project, we strongly believe that this board and this forum are where such significant design issues should be addressed. We encourage you to return this project for redesign, taking into account the considerations of staff, this board, and then all of the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Lawler?
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Joe Lawler. I live at 3541 Downing Avenue, directly east of the property in question. My wife is Liz, you just heard from her. We certainly appreciate removing the balcony from the back of the original design, and we certainly appreciate the reduction of the mass and scale of the garage. We don't understand the applicant's refusal to seriously or significantly reduce the mass and scale of the house design. City planners, yourselves, the entire neighborhood have all asked him to make this design smaller and better articulated, and we're just not seeing it. We also want to be clear that this massive second story reduces our property value by taking away our mountain view. Our lots are tiny. We build a corridor of massive homes. We lose all the reasons we're drawn to Spar Heights. The views, the light, our modicum of personal space. The problem with the mass and scale of the second story is exacerbated by the fact that it's at the top of the hill. The southern half of the second story hangs out over the single-story house adjacent to it, which is below it. So we'd simply like to suggest that the recommendations already being made by the city, especially regarding the southern end of the second story, be implemented. And we respectfully request that this project be returned for redesign. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kathleen Ingram?
My name is Kathleen Ingman, and I live at 3532 Buena Vista, which is the house 2 doors south of the property. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, Carl Martellino, who's here tonight, back there with my kids. I've also was at the meeting at your home, and I was pleased to meet you, and I'm very happy to have you as my neighbors. So I've heard this presentation twice about the changes, and I've very carefully read the report. There is a strong neighborhood sentiment that this design is too big and too boxy. I know last time there was some comment that this was a pack mentality, and I can assure you that, at least for myself, this is my opinion. Nobody has influenced my opinion. There's no one going around the neighborhood trying to round up opposition for this project. I've never spoken before a design review board meeting. I've never written a letter to the design review board before, in spite of the fact that I've owned my home for 12 years and there have been many projects on my street. There have been numerous changes made to the design of this project. However, I don't think that the primary change that was the concern last time, which was the mass and boxy size, has really been addressed in any significant way. The mass and design size of the house, I feel, are essentially unchanged from last time. And I know you have some pictures. I'm sorry, I don't know if these are different. These are new pictures of the story poles, and those are old ones. So we were very excited when the story poles went down and wanted to see the changes, and the comment around the neighborhood was sort of like, well, what changed? It was very difficult to see where the change was. I believe that this picture here, the photoshopped rendering, shows the home from its good side. I think that the mass and boxiness are really apparent when you approach the home from the south side for several reasons. There's a very tall wall there, and it's adjacent to a single-story home. And that single-story home, incidentally, is not a particularly petite home. It's quite, a substantial single-story home. There are also 2 driveways, the owner's driveway plus the adjacent driveway, so there's not really a house next to it that sort of blocks that sheer wall view very well. And the designer has pushed the house over as far as possible into the driveway, leaving no room for any plants or trees or anything that would break up that wall. So it's really that approach from the south where it really hits you, and the view is overwhelming. It's just too big and too boxy, in my opinion. I can certainly want you to build a good addition to the neighborhood and something that's right for your family. We all want that. My husband and I wanted that. We've also remodeled our home. In Spar Heights, we all want larger homes. None of us want to cut into our backyard. We'd all like our family to be on the same story. But I don't think that these things are, I don't think you can have all of those things. I think you need to pick one thing, or 2 things, or a few of those things. My husband and I chose to expand out into our backyard. We have a lovely 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath home, which suits the needs of our family. Some people elect to go up and put a master suite on the 2nd floor. Some people elect to move out of the neighborhood. I think there's a lot of different ways that this can be done. There's very few, maybe 4 or 5 that I know of in our entire neighborhood that have all of the bedrooms on the 2nd floor. It's just something that's not compatible with our neighborhood. We have a very quaint charm. We have a friendly kind of neighborhood feel. We like to be neighborly. It's very hard for me to get up here and speak out against something that I know is important to my neighbors. I know that construction is stressful, and I certainly hope that some compromise can be reached, but I don't think we're there yet. And so I urge you to return this for redesign. I don't think approval with conditions is appropriate because I feel like the changes are too significant yet to be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes all the cards I have. Does the architect wish to address any of the comments from the neighbors or the owner at this time?
I mean, just one thing, to say that there's...
Well, put your name and address, please.
Tom Hines, 3540 Buena Vista. I mean, there are 3 houses on my very street that are this exact, or maybe not exact, but very close to this size. And I realize that they're older homes, but they're still part of the community. They still be considered part of the package that we're going in, I mean, so I know most of the houses aren't 2-story, but there's at least 3 on Buena Vista that are about 2,500 square feet. So, I mean, and most people, when I tell them I want a 2,500 square foot home, don't consider that overly large. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public session. Mr. Mardian, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned the last meeting, first I appreciate the applicant maintaining the average setback in the front. That was a good direction. I still do have concerns that condition number 1, A and B, have not truly met. I do believe further reduction in the mass could be achieved. The boxy appearance still there. I don't see significant change in the shape of the building. And my main concern, trying to achieve all these roof cables and all on this small box, I think it's part of the problem, because none of this, I look at this roof plan, I don't think this, with the, each slope changes as, the shape of the building occurs, and I don't think you're going to be able to construct that properly. I think there's too many breaks in the building on the roof that is causing the problem. I do feel that the mass, we were very direct last time. Craftsman is a great approach in this neighborhood, but historically in neighborhoods like this, there's even on Craftsman, if you look at our existing neighborhoods in the city, the second floor on the Craftsman sits substantially back. You could still achieve your square footage. We're not asking a huge setback. Even if you double up what you have may reduce the setback further. And that's really my main concern, is the fronts, the second story setback. The articulation, the detailing could be worked out, but I want to hear what my colleagues say.
Mr. Malikian?
Well, in the past, we've had a lot of success when we've given advice and direction to applicants, and especially when we try to send the project back to return for redesign, we definitely expect the applicant to work with staff. When it comes back to us, and majority of the items that staff indicates that hasn't been met, that brings a red flag for me, and I start scrutinizing and reviewing the plans a lot further. I'm not sure if the applicant understands. In my opinion, I think reducing the mass and the scale, it's not reducing, pushing the building back a foot or two. It's the mass and the scale. It's not playing and Mickey Mousing the roof formation and lowering it 9 inches. The height is still the same, floor to floor, 10-foot ceiling height and 9-foot ceiling height. Those are still the same. Sitting on a 2-foot podium, that's still the same. Reducing the mass is reducing the height, reducing the volume. Doesn't mean reducing the square footage, in my opinion. It's not, I don't have any problem. Even though it's probably going to be the largest within the three, it is the largest based on the average neighborhood survey that we got. The average house size is 1,500 in that area, and the average lot size is 6,500, which is similar to this lot. And for that 6,500 square foot lot, you got a 1,500 square foot average size home with a 1-story. In this particular case, 6,500 lot, we're getting a 2,500 size home. So in order for that to happen, obviously it's within the right. I don't have any objections to the size, but if the massing and scale is not appropriate, then I would have to start looking into the size of the building. Reducing the height would have been a great start. Bringing the volumes down and maintaining and working with the slope of the street and not matching the height to the northern side of the structure and basically stepping it down. I truly think that the formation and the forms of the original, the first go around, and how it was a lot more consistent. Roof made sense, and as we're getting further into this and trying to pull and push and do different things, I think it's just losing its character. There's a lot of great examples of craftsmen in Pasadena and around here, green and green projects, and you get a lot of great examples of a shallow slope with exaggerated overhangs and different and recessed or set back on the second level and large overhangs over the balconies and so on and so forth. This particular case, we're dealing with a small lot, so we can't really do that. And it's a great example of the roof over the garage. We didn't want you to change the form of the roof. We wanted you to lower the roof, not change the form. So tell us that, okay, now we got a lower mass. It's not. It's the same height. It's the same plate height. So in my opinion, I think they missed the boat like crazy, and I think it's really a wrong approach not to listen to staff and getting their advice. They've been here. They listened to us. They know what we want, and when we get projects that majority of them haven't been met, and for me that's a problem. I do have to put it on record that I have disagreed with staff in many occasions, but in this particular case, if majority of the comments that they've noticed that it hasn't been met, then that's a problem for me.
Mr. Chartian?
I'm going to keep it really short. I wasn't here on Design Review Board when this was first submitted. As submitted now, I think that a craftsman-style home is appropriate for the neighborhood. I think that staff has tried very hard from the comments that I see and also from the last minutes from the last meeting. There's a lot of feedback. The neighbors are giving a lot of feedback, and the feedback is it's too massive. And I want to comment on the square footage. No one, at least I'm not saying and would not expect you to reduce the size of your home. You have a certain need for a certain amount of space. None of the neighbors are saying that. But by looking at the mass from the street, from the south side, it frankly looks as if there's a box on top of an old craftsman home. That's not the look I think that you want. It's not the look that the neighbors want. So I think that you need to revisit the first two conditions. I would also suggest that you look at your driveway. That is the radius is back there, and the turning radius isn't, and that big expanse of space that you have on your driveway, I think, is going to be problematic in use, not only in design. That's it.
I agree with all the comments that are made. If this is going to be a craftsman style, I think it needs to be studied a little more carefully. Craftsman styles, if more square footage from the second floor was pushed down on the first floor, that would allow a top second floor to be pushed back, and that's a typical style of the craftsman. As seen from the south side, it does look like a straight side box. There's no room for vegetation to soften that. It's a very narrow lot. So if this style is going to be continued to be used, I think it needs to be addressed with the height of the first floor, that 12-foot. Maybe the columns need to be tapered and more beefed up. You have this large fireplace that enhances that box look, where if you look at craftsman style, it's sort of tapered and goes with the house. So I agree with the comments, and I don't think the square footage is too much, but I do think that should be considered of moving something downstairs and expanding that. You can still have a yard, work around the garage, but those are my comments.
I may add, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do really want to concur and emphasize all of you that we're not questioning the square footage. It's just the mass that is not working here. And I mean, our guidelines are very specific on such neighborhoods where, you have to be sensitive to the neighborhood. And in the last meeting, I truly questioned the two neighbors who live on the adjacent to those two existing 2 stories, and I didn't get really a direct answer. But even those houses, I don't think they have a plate height of 9 feet or higher. I think they're about 8 feet, their average heights. So there is room to drop this building, and there is room to further set it back. And I think the direction of the design is, is good, and the detailing could be worked out. But now that I'm looking at this porch that we really didn't get into it, I mean, this is a 20-foot span. Got a structural roof on it. I mean, with these small member exposed beams, it's going to be really a structurally problematic. And I'd like to see the garage. I know we said to drop the height, but the pitch hasn't changed. I think, the garage should match, the roof of the garage should match the house. And we have exposed roof rafter tails that should be pretty much implemented throughout, even in the garage. I mean, we need to create something consistent here. And I really strongly suggest that there's several houses of Craftsman, second story in existing one neighborhoods, not necessarily Pasadena, but locally here, that, even driving around, you could find them. And I'm not saying duplicate them, but historically, I think Madam Chair mentioned it, Craftsman's, homes do have substantial second-story setbacks. And, this hybrid design has been done other parts of the country, but I don't think it fits in this neighborhood. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a question for staff. This was a return for redesign, correct? So,
Yes.
So we can't really do another return for redesign, right?
No,
We
you
can't?
can't. If you choose to do that, you might want to reopen the hearing and ask the owner if they are possibly going to entertain the conditions you're imposing. If they weren't going to do that and just came back with the same design once again, it would be wasting everyone's time. At that point, you could choose to deny the project.
Up to you. Sure.
Well, I'm going to ask the architect if they'd like to come up. If we do return this for redesign, would you be willing to address the issues or not?
I mean, we just had a short discussion. It's really up to the owner what he wants to do with the house. I mean, I'm trying to make your rules what his family needs, what the neighborhood needs. I'm trying to mesh those all together. I actually think we've done a pretty good job. I would prefer, if we do the redesign, to work with different staff members, though. Is that possible? Can I request that we work with different staff members?
I don't.
Why not? We can't switch staff? Well, you guys keep writing me. I mean, he writes me this report, even though we've made all these cutbacks and concessions.
You're not. I don't think you're seeing what they're asking for.
Okay.
Your little
I
set-
do think I'm seeing what you're asking for, and I think we've given you what exactly what was in
Then
that paper.
I think I have a clear direction what I need to do now.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
The owner might want to speak. Go to the microphone.
I'm more than happy to take into the considerations everything that's been said here and submit another house for redesign, but I do know that I don't know if it's just a personality issue, but that there's been problems, and I'm not going to say that it's all on one side, but there's consistently been personality issues.
Well,
with this
I don't think we're here to judge personalities or what has happened. So we're here to look at the design and make a decision. And we've given a very direct direction to you and your architect on what we want to see, reduce the mass. It's gone back, and we got this back in 2 months down, and it's almost identical. So I'm going to make your job a lot easier, and so that if you're going to redesign this, I'm going to deny this so that you can kind of start from scratch, come back to us with brand new application, figure out what you want to do. You may even get a new the planner, I don't know. But this way it'll help you and it'll make a decision. So I would like to, and thank you.
I'd like to ask the owner a question.
Could you come back up, please?
Please. I want to first say I understand your frustration. I've built houses, and you go through a lot. But there's a disconnect here. Okay? Personalities aside, there's a disconnect here. And that disconnect needs to be resolved some way if you want to build. If this project was in a different part of Glendale with larger lot sizes in a different different neighborhood that had more massive homes, this design might work with certain design features. But in this neighborhood, under these circumstances, on this side of the lot, it doesn't. So we can work together, or we can keep doing this buddy thing, saying that the staff's not helping you. We're here to help. The reason that we're all here is to help you build this project. So I want you to understand that, and for what that's worth, okay?
So I think by doing that, that will, at some
Can I
level...
ask you a question? If we come back with the 2,500 square foot house and we move one of the bedrooms downstairs, you guys going to support us, or are we going to do this again?
We would have to look at your design. I mean, we can't.
Of course we would. But in general, I'm just saying in principle.
That was a suggestion.
We move 100 square feet off the upstairs, or 120, whatever that bedroom is. Shrink it up a little on the sides and stuff like that. Are we going to do this 10 more times?
I mean, honestly, at this point, if you had a design I could pick that met my square footage requirements, I would just take it.
We've given an exact, there's like 13 items that we've given you what we want to see. Reduce the mass and the scale. And it's up to you how you want to interpret that. I mean, we're not here to literally sit there and sketch and design the project. We cannot do that. What we can do is we can comment on the design that comes in front of us. So if you decide that to reduce the mass, moving a portion of the upper level to downstairs, and then reducing some of the ground floor area and reducing the upper level, reducing the height, increasing some of the overhangs and setbacks and all that, it's up to you. I mean, these are the stuff that we've been saying in 2 hearings, and everybody, all the neighborhood is coming and saying the same thing. But if you come back to us again with a 10-foot, and I'm just trying to help you and just say, go back and redesign and come back with a brand new project.
I speak for myself and my husband. We greatly appreciate the size allotment, the 2,500 square foot, and we will change all of the restrictions that are on there and come back.
And just to clarify, the board is not dictating a 2,500 square foot project. It's quite possible that a project of that size will not work for a design on this site, so we have to look at all options.
And we're not asking that it has to be Craftsman either.
I'm sorry?
And
It doesn't have to be Craftsman either. It could be...
Oh. Okay.
That's something you chose, but if you
Yes.
decide in another design to come up with something else, we'd be more than happy to look
We
at
do
that.
prefer that
I
style.
want
Clarification.
yeah,
Said like
absolutely.
2,500 square foot.
Okay, and for clarification, you may come back with 1,500 square foot house, and I might deny that too. It just depends on how you come up with the design. So it doesn't mean 2,500, 2,400, 1,500. It's how you're going to design it, how you're going to mass this building. That's the architect's responsibility, and for us to review the design that it comes in front of us.
We'll go one by one and we'll fix it.
To clarify my comment again, this process is in conjunction with what you're allowed to build by code and by what the city allows in a zoning perspective. Our role is not to dictate to you how large or small your house should be. I have no issue with the 2,500 square foot home as long as the design of it fits the neighborhood and fits the general guidelines that we have in the design review committee for our part. The feedback has been consistently that your second story mass is too large. It needs to be addressed. It was not. That's the issue.
We'll do a much better job next visit.
May I add one thing about their request to have another planner, but I want to ask staff, I thought we have a design studio. One staff member consults with a senior planner. You discuss this
We work
in-house?
together as a team, but projects, the same staff move forward with all projects so that we can have consistency in the staff approach. We don't feel that our meetings have been as difficult as the architect seems to have expressed, but we can certainly talk about the process. But in general, we carry the same team forward through a project.
And let the record show, I don't work by myself, meaning, once again, to reiterate what Jay just said, in every meeting that we've had with the applicant, Jay, as a member of the design studio staff, has always been present. Staff reports that I draft and prepare are always reviewed by supervisors, my supervisor and the design studio staff. This is not a one-man show, for the record.
And then I'll say this on record. I've been on board for a long time, and this is the first I hear an applicant have an issue with any of the staff. So I think the staff is doing a great job, and they're very consistent, and the comments and the conditions that they put on the report is very consistent with what we expect and what we review and what we say on the project. So when they say that it's not going to happen, most probably it's not going to happen because they've heard us in the past. They know what we think. They know what we want. And also there is a guideline that we're following. It's not just what we want. We have given a guideline by the city that has been approved by the council, and we're following that. And by looking at this, in our opinion, it just doesn't fit. So that's all it is. So I do want to...
I was going to just suggest, Madam Chair, before we move to make a motion, is there any other conditions that might be addressed on top of the list that already exists?
I think unless staff has any others, we've got the 3 in addition to the first list. And I don't think we came up with any today.
And we could read back the conditions as we understand them, because there were several of the conditions from the previous meeting were met, so we want to acknowledge
Could you just
that.
read the ones that
Sure.
have not been met, please?
We will maintain the condition to transfer square footage to the first floor from the second floor, and or reduce the overall square footage to allow for the reduction in size, mass, and scale of the second floor. Whatever we need to do to achieve that. We will look to see that there's further reductions at the second floor to allow more setbacks at the south and the north to help reduce the boxy appearance. We will, an added condition from the board is that we'll look to further reduce the height of the house through changes possibly in floor-to-ceiling heights, the height of the house above the ground, anything that could achieve that. We will reconsider the design of the front porch so that the proportions are more appropriate to the style, and so that the span of the beam, for example, is located in the appropriate place and has the appropriate support or visual support below it. We will look at the roof plan. This actually may combine a couple of concepts. Staff did think that the eave projections were too big, which wasn't addressed by the board tonight. But we'll maintain that condition with your approval.
I think if the design, if the properly craftsman design has been achieved, I think of exaggerated eave lines, I think I wouldn't mind that. But
okay.
If they want to do it.
If they do.
Okay, so we made some of these may not apply ultimately if the design changes significantly. What we will do is look to redesign the roof to make it less complicated. Possibly remove the hip design and return to something closer to the first proposal, or incorporate some hip design if that does help with the mass and scale, but make sure that the details and the arrangement of the forms are more appropriate. We talked about the sides of the house. Some of these are a little duplicative.
You had to address the height between from the north to the south? So that it goes with the street?
Oh, reduce height from north to south? Okay.
Is that correct, north to south?
Yes.
So better follow the topography.
How about the garage?
I have a bunch more, so.
Do you have any comments?
So.
Should be compatible.
Should be compatible. The garage should be compatible.
Okay, I'm not done, if you want me to. I'm still on the printed staff comments. We have some new ones. We're going to use the previous window configuration for the front windows of the front porch area if this design is retained. We will eliminate the roof eave condition and try to work with just to get a better roof design. Same for the third printed condition, that we'll kind of combine those into one condition that covers the roof. We'll reduce the size of the fireplace or the chimney. We'll address the porch issue. We'll reduce the height of the building from north to south to better follow the site topography. We'll have a garage roof that matches the overall design of the house while maintaining the lowest possible height for the garage. Let's see, some of these are... That, I believe, is everything that I've got.
Well, it just seems like we're going backwards. I mean, we've gotten more comments and conditions
Well, I think
than...
they understand now that we're serious about it and that they can change the design they want, but if they can't come back with something with significant changes, then there'd be no point in doing so. I don't think we need a motion at this point.
If I may add one item, I'd like to see the floor plans in the same orientation as the site plan. Makes it less complicated. That's a technical matter.
We have them a little larger, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of small.
With that, I'll make a motion for return for design with the conditions.
I'll second.
Motion to return for redesign by Board Member Mardian, and a second by Board Member Charchian. Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
No.
Chairperson Palmer?
Yes.
Motion carries. Return for redesign.
Next project is 566 Chevy Chase. Ms. Toledo, could you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I disagree with
Submitted. I didn't get anything today.
Didn't I have to start from scratch, huh?
That's what I'm saying. It makes everyone's life easier.
You know, I feel bad for them because I should get it this up.
You know what happens? Sometimes my emails get sent to Mike Toledo if you don't put in the right address. Glendale City.
Get a better
Okay. Yeah, for now. I'll keep the original on.
Something with the deep.
The back.
Is the old? That's the fun thing.
Toledo at GlendaleCA.gov. I'll send you an email.
Get a little bit of water. Sure.
But with your email address.
They were never allowed.
Forgetting.
Oh.
Actually, no, do we need to keep the boards, or we can let them take them?
I think we should keep the rendering so that we have something to
Julia,
compare.
They're
please.
big people.
With regards to the boards, it does become a matter of public record, so we would either need to keep the boards or to have the applicant submit reduced colored copies tomorrow.
What you just said about you. Could you tomorrow give us reduced colored copies of all of those boards and photographs of the model tomorrow? Otherwise, you have to leave the boards with us.
Thank you.
Okay, this next item before you is 2566 East Chevy Chase Drive. The case was also heard on June 26th, and it was returned for redesign. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 2,892 square foot, 3-story single-family house and a 430 square foot attached garage on an undeveloped lot, which is 17,948 square feet. The average current slope is approximately 45%, and they are proposing to grade 1,650 cubic yards of earth in conjunction with the project. In terms of CEQA status, the proposed mitigated neg deck was circulated for a 20-day comment period, May 22nd of 2014 to June 11th of 2014. At that time, staff did not receive any comments, and due to the existence of the oak trees on the subject property, an indigenous tree report was prepared at that time. On the June 26th meeting, the Design Review Board adopted the environmental document, made a motion. The current revisions made to the project include reduction of grading, total floor area was reduced, and the number of oak tree removals was reduced compared to the original project that was evaluated in the environmental document. So therefore, staff determined that recirculation of the M&D was not required. I'd like to just jump straight to the comments the board had at the last meeting and go over them. Item number 1 was to reduce the amount of grading by means of techniques such as terracing the house to better conform to the hillside, reducing the square footage to bring the rear wall closer to the street, and/or other means to accomplish this goal. The total amount of grading was reduced from 1,985 cubic yards to 1,650 cubic yards. The revised design includes modifications to the front facade, the retaining walls, and the staircase. In addition, the proposed total floor area was reduced from 3,072 square feet to 2,892 square feet. So the changes to the house that I just described resulted in a reduction to the overall proposed grading, and that's why it's now been reduced to 1,650. Item 2 was to provide more articulation at the front facade based on the revisions that they made, the relocation of the front entry to the ground floor at street level, the removal of the staircase at the front, the reduction in the number of retaining walls, the new rafters above the garage doors, stone cladding on the front facade, and also redesign of the balcony and the fenestration at the 3rd floor, and the redesign of the roof and the balcony on the 2nd floor on the right side. Those changes at the front of the house have articulated the front facade, and it shows thoughtful execution of the design and the use of materials in its application. Item 3 was to redesign the front stairs to avoid removal of the large oak tree at the front of the property by possibly incorporating a floating design that would protect the root system of the tree. So as a result, the new design with the modifications, including, once again, the removal of the staircase and the retaining walls at the front, that design approach has enabled the preservation of that existing oak tree, which is located at the front right side of the property, which you can see on the site plan. And the relocation, again, of the front entry to the ground level was a good solution, which eliminated the need for multiple stairs and walls at the front. The new front entry will be accessed from the driveway, and fire-required stair access will remain along the right side of the house and follow the natural grade. Item 4 was to incorporate additional landscape at the front of the property if condition number 3 couldn't be met. But as I described in item number 3, the existing oak tree will be preserved. And in addition to that, the applicant will be required to adhere to the mitigation measures stipulated in the indigenous tree report, and there was an addendum also prepared based on the modifications made to the project. Item 5 was to introduce a stone base at the front of the house on either side of the base of the garage with an appropriate datum line to reduce the sense of verticality at the central bay, and that has been addressed. The revised design does include the stone base as requested by the board, and also the use of the stone at the garage level and beyond appropriately, again, articulates the front facade and reduces the mass and sense of verticality at the front facade. Item 6 was to enclose the area under the cantilevered landing. In this case, again, as described in item number 3 in the conditions, the front entry stairs were removed, so as a result, the existing oak tree, the front right side was preserved. So again, this condition moot. Item 7 was to reduce the width of the shutters at the windows above the garage and at the right side of the 2nd floor, and the width of the shutters above the garage was reduced. The shutters at the right side of the 2nd floor were removed, and 3 individual windows were introduced. Item 8 was regarding the zigzag retaining walls, where staff, or in this case the board, recommended to avoid those zigzag retaining walls. They have done that. The proposed retaining walls of the driveway are straight and simple. No zigzag walls are proposed. Item 9 was to clearly identify the trash location. They have done that. The trash location is at the front left side between the planter and the garage, screen behind the wall. That concludes the conditions the board made at the last meeting. I did receive a letter from the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association. I got 3 copies, which I passed around. So please review that. Apparently they attempted to email it to me yesterday. I did not receive it for some reason. I have not read the letter, so we'll find out. He's here in the audience, but it seems like they are mentioning excessive grading. They have 3 bullet points. They mention noncompliance with the general plan in terms of the house size plus retaining walls. They're discussing alteration of the terrain and recent decisions or adverse decisions made on, and they're referencing certain projects. And another item is irregular oversight. And again, this is submitted by the Chevy Chase Estates Association. I don't have any further comments at this time. If you have any questions for staff,
Any questions?
I'm available.
Has there been a railing detail submitted?
I have not received a railing detail, no.
Maybe the architect could address that. Do we have any other questions? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Hagobian?
Good evening. My name is Edward Hagobian. I'm the architect of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I think the presentation by Milka was covering almost everything. There's nothing, not much left for me to say. We have met all the recommendations and changes that was required by Design Review Board, and we have less grading, we have less square footage, we have less massing, we have the trash enclosure there, we have everything is done. It's the major change is that in stairs in the front that we have changed the entire design of it, and it's hidden, and the oak tree will be preserved, and that's all I can say. There's not much for me to say, unless if you have questions.
Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Hagopian. Your exposed beams, the rafter tails, are they 4x or 2x? The eave
I believe it's more than that, maybe 6x.
No, the rafter tails I'm talking about, the eaves,
At
the
least,
overhang.
at least 4x. Okay. At least, yeah.
And can you tell me how you reduced the height? Because the ceiling height hasn't changed. Is it the roof shape has changed? Because I tried to follow it up and I figured, okay, it's the roof has changed. And then I think northeast.
I don't remember these details of maybe we have changed. I don't remember. Sorry for that.
I'm trying to determine
we pushed the retaining wall on the back, a portion of it, as was recommended by
the corner.
Mr. Pardon me?
The corner there in the back.
Yeah, as was recommended by design board members, especially Mr. Malikian. So that reduced the amount of the grading on the back.
Oh.
And the design of the roofs was changed a little bit. We pushed the front of the second floor a little bit further back, so we created that articulation there. We eliminated the entry stairs that is going up, and it's gone, no more. So overall, that's what we have done.
What happened to the northeast elevation? Why do I end up losing the gable there? Do you have a gable here? Why do I end up losing it and I have a shed roof kind of a thing going all the way back to this retaining wall?
Because we don't need that anymore.
Is that because the reduction of the floor was done there?
We don't need that anymore, yeah. We reduced in that portion, yeah. We changed the design of the second floor. We reduced that, and we don't need that anymore.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Brian Duran?
Good evening. My name is Brian Duran. I live on Graceland Way in Glendale. I'm also the president of the Chevy Chase Estates Association, and I'm speaking this evening in opposition to approval of this project. I did carry in the letter that was unsuccessfully delivered to Milka, and in there are specific points to be made. I'm not going to read that letter, but I'm going to just give an overall view here. Our view is that, once again, there's a house that's being built on an extreme slope. It even has difficulty meeting maximum grading limits because so much has to be cut into that hill. Because of that vertical component, it's difficult to avoid excessive mass. Because of all this, there'll be a significant alteration to the terrain from what we see. Comments from people who live nearby are essentially, are they kidding? How can you build a house on a slope that steep? So we are here to represent them. The underlying project, we think, is the intent of the general plan is being strained here. The design guidelines state that the location and profile of buildings should reflect topography and slope, and that, quote, buildings may be terraced up the hillside or built into the upslope in order to minimize the alteration of the landform. But the amount of terracing, as evidenced in the plans submitted is minimal, primarily because of the steep slope. The guidelines also encourage, quote, building into the hillside to diminish visual impact of mass and scale. We appreciate that, but the proposed plan does not appear to be successful at diminishing visual impact and scale, even with the size reduction that is proposed. This is because the house is sited where 75% of the rise and slope occurs. Terracing is not effective because of that verticality. The essence of the problem with the project is, we think, it is not being faithful to the basic premise of the general plan and the guidelines. It's inconsistent in observing design objectives outlined in the municipal code. It does not successfully show preservation of natural features compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And the effort to minimize alteration of terrain, we believe, is unsuccessful. We recommend that this structure be relocated to maybe the more level portion of the lot, which is above, or further reduce the size to enable mass reduction. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Question, please. In your letter, irregular oversight, can you explain what that's all about?
We were here before when this case was being handled. There was some confusion as to who was doing what and how things were to be followed. And we feel that because the old set structure was not followed, that something may have been dropped, and we're just trying to encourage that this be looked at particularly carefully since the department is in a transition stage to the new plan.
But our guidelines haven't changed, if I may ask staff.
I think he's referring to the change for hillside from CUP to DRB approval for those hillsides.
The elements were separated before by variance and CUP,
I just
and now
want to make sure what I'm reading here, because I know the review process has changed on the CUP.
And just to remind the board, your first consideration should be for the hillside issues, the amount of grading on the site and the slope. I think we're under the slope, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's 45.
Yeah, so your only consideration is the level of grading is over the 1,500 cubic yards. That isn't a maximum amount. That's just the threshold that requires the additional level of environmental review.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Naomi Nish?
Have a better picture of the area that we're working with. My name is Naomi Nishi, and I live on 2570 East Chevy Chase Drive, which means I will be the neighbor of this property when the project is completed. My main concern that I would like the design board to reassure me as a primary resident on that 2570 East Chevy Chase, when you approve this project, that you will be approving with my home safety. I am not an engineer, so when I heard that this project is going to remove over 1,600 cubic yard of earth and will impact 6 well-established oaks, including removing 2 of the oak trees, which you'll see in one of the pictures. It's fairly large tree between my property and their property. I was concerned for the safety of my home due to possible movement of the hillside that our properties share. I have provided pictures, as you can see, of our backside of our home, and it shows how close our house is, and the house you see there is my master bedroom, is to the proposed project, and how my home can be impacted if there are any movement of earth due to this development. And not to mention one of the oak being removed, which supposedly number 32 is attached, so I know it's protected, will change the view from our main window, as you can see on the picture I provided, since our home was designed to incorporate the surrounding protected oaks and hillside in the area. And obviously, this tree is no longer protected. But going back to my main concern, please reassure me, the resident, that you will only permit a design that will not cause any earth movement to endanger our house or our property and trees, and that our house is safe from developing cracks on the walls or from falling trees, since you don't let us cut our oak trees since they're supposed to be protected. Also, in the future, I believe the city should address how this project will control traffic, noise, and dust throughout the construction, since you can see the road right there. It's great that you have that picture back there. This part of Chevy Chase Drive is very narrow. The part they will be building is a pretty sharp curve where a lot of cars crash into. You could check the police reports for those. It is heavily used by cars, cyclists, and pedestrians throughout the day. There is not a time that this street is empty and not used. And I question, with very limited space to park any large vehicle, I would prefer that the city take a look at how the traffic will be. Thank you for your time and listening to my concerns, and I would like my rights for my safety as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Close the public's.
Did she say a tree is being removed on that site?
As opposed
Correct.
to 6 the previous time.
Right.
So there are 12 oak trees. 6 of them will be directly impacted as a result of the construction. And originally, they proposed the removal of 3 oak trees, but that's been modified based on the new design. They're removing 2.
And if the board remembers, this prominent oak tree at the front was one of the ones that was going to be removed in the redesign.
Now that's being retained.
Correct.
Let me ask you, when these trees, if they have to go by the mitigation measures, and put fencing around the drip lines, et cetera, there's several places, several oak trees that are affected within a couple feet of the house itself. How is that?
They have, from my understanding, and there is an email that Ms. Nishi received from our city arborist technician, because I was copied. And if I may, I'd like to read it briefly so the records show their process. She mentions that the project was, presented to the board prior to receiving approvals, and per the indigenous tree ordinance, the general contractor hired an arborist to review the proposed plans and submit an indigenous tree report, which was reviewed by the forestry and approved. In addition, the property owner has obtained the same arborist of record for all professional arboricultural services, including recommendations and project oversight for the work being done within the project zone of the trees. Recently, the revised plans has been, it says it's been approved, which will preserve one of the trees previously recommended for removal, reducing the number of trees to be removed to 2. While the construction does not encroach upon the trees, while the construction does encroach upon the trees, the arborist of record has the responsibility to monitor the site and trees and provide regular reports to forestry as a condition of approval. I could continue reading, but I think that should
I
answer
asked
your
a question the last time it was presented, whether the arborist had the opportunity to review the grading plan when they reviewed it, and that
You
question
did.
was never answered.
Oh, I guess let's ask the applicant now.
I think before planning signs off on it, they have to get their signature anyway.
Right, but it
But
seems
the arborist makes a favorable report that those
Right.
trees can be saved. If they haven't looked at the grading plan, I'm looking one here that's about 5 feet away, and walls are going to impact trunks.
This one you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yeah.
That one is already being,
Is that one coming out?
that's the one coming out.
Okay.
That's the one, that's why I questioned, there's 3 before, now it's 2 being removed.
correct.
Okay.
That's the one that is close to that building.
Okay. I'm fine with that then.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and make any more comments, Mr. Hagopian?
I want to assure our neighbor that this house will be engineered. We all know about that. This has been one time to time, the neighbors' concern that this project will go through the process of the city with the engineering department, the building department, and it will end up with a better condition with the drainage that it is now. So we will have engineered drainage, we'll have a structural design with caissons, and by the way, our arborist has always receiving our plans, complete plans of grading, site plan, and he studies that, and based on that, he sends the recommendation to Annie Sheets, and she approves that. Besides that, I don't want to respond to the other comments. I leave it to you. You have enough knowledge and experience about this kind of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Malikian.
I appreciate all the letters and comments that we received, and I'm glad that the applicants have listened to our recommendations, and I appreciate the effort of relocating that retaining wall, which in the past for me it didn't do anything. One of the documents that it really helps me understand what is going on, because right now if I look at the elevation, it looks like a very tall, a building that doesn't really, for me, it just doesn't look right in the site, and also the retaining wall. But I'm really glad to see the perspective, because then that's what it actually explains how the articulations, how the forms and recessing of the volumes and everything kind of work and help shape the facade and elevation. So in this particular case, I'm going to rely on the perspective making the decision, then I would rely on the elevations. I think the effort has gone in, and I think with that, looking at that, and I don't know if everybody has been able to see this, how it has improved the project. I appreciate the reduction of the, and I don't know if the height was reduced. I don't think it was reduced. But something happened that it was, something did happen that makes it less massive, in my opinion. There's obviously some fine-tuning and some elements there that I think it would help fix, but I like that perspective.
Okay. Mr. Chartier?
Oh, I'm not on. I apologize.
Start over a little bit.
Start over.
Yeah.
For the record. I turned that off so that I wouldn't tap it with paper and make that sound, and I forgot to turn it back on. So my initial concern is the 17-foot, basically high retaining wall, 15 plus 2. Overall, it looks like there's been a lot of effort on the exterior of the home to address the height, the mass, but that 15-foot or 17-foot wall is still visible. What I think needs to happen, and when you're in that backyard area, it's also going to be a very large wall. I think you need to have some sort of maybe vertical landscaping component to that to soften that from the street.
That it?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Mardian?
That's quick. I do concur with my colleagues. I want to compliment the applicant for seriously reducing the grading. I think the grading, although our rules are 1,500, but he's not exceeding that threshold by much by reducing it 300 semi-square feet. Some reduction have occurred on the house. I do like the detailing that has occurred versus the first submittal. I do have some, conditions I'd like to add. Is the member sizes of these wood framing and the exposed rafters and the beams that are supporting the balconies. You could see that on the side elevations. I think they need to be as thick as the column.
Could you be more specific on that, or refer to a drawing, maybe?
Yeah, he's got all these exposed rafters and the beam underneath. See, if you look at the side, it's very narrow compared to the posts. They should be continuous.
The rafters should be the same dimension as
the same dimension.
They're raised planners.
Actually, one of my critical comments, and I like to hear what my colleagues say. I think there's a substantial improvement in the elevation. Something has happened with the height, but still have a concern with that middle piece. It seems like that middle or the triple windows there above the garage seems a little high. Now, I don't know if we could achieve that by raising the stonework to be in line with that balcony to further reduce the, I don't know if you
There's an overhang there, I believe.
There's an overhang here. I'm talking about here.
I've meant above the garage.
Well, yeah, but that whole garage is covered.
I think when I was saying about some of the detail work, I think what it's doing is you're looking at some symmetrical element there. You got the post above. It will allow you to split the window, put some post, some detailing that area. You got the sliding door behind it has nothing to do with the center or the columns and all that.
No.
So there's certain things there that can happen. I think it's just solid mass.
It's solid mass.
It got better than what it was before.
Well, yes, definitely. Yeah, but I thought maybe if we don't want to reduce the ceiling height, maybe continue that stonework a little higher.
I'm in agreement with that.
Would a kind of a flower pot shelf work in that location?
That's one way to,
So you will have options to consider ways to break up the mass between the sill of the window and the.
Is that the 15-foot setback there? That elevation?
Sorry.
That's what it looks like.
Yes.
It is?
Yeah. And holistically, on these style homes, although someone might say that you really can't see these roofs that much, but you will see the lower roofs. I think two-piece tile is more appropriate for style as such.
Going back to that section, can a volume be placed over that so that it gives some, like what you suggested about if it's within this front setback?
No, any part of the facade would have to respect the setback line.
Even
Yeah, but
if
wouldn't
an
that be like an
attachment is a decorative attachment.
Something like a canopy or an awning could project
30 inches.
into the setback. So a flower shelf could project, but we couldn't build a structural part of the house that projected over.
Got it.
Those are my concern. I think there's substantial improvements, and I compliment the architect for the details, and I hope all these details get carried out. And the reduction in cubic yard, I don't think although he's exceeding the threshold, but it's a minimal, increase on the. It's much better than 1900. It's about 300 square feet cubic yard of reduction. I just don't want to. I want to make sure also these exposed rafter tails are 4x. And
I think that's required by code in the fire interface.
6x. I think will really enhance the building further on such.
So you want 6x for the rafters?
4x, 6x. I mean, he's willing
four
to go
4x as a code required minimum or
higher.
bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. So we won't make that a condition since the minimum would meet.
And the railing should not be very ornate.
But should have some detail?
Yes, some detail.
It's in the plan, when you look at outside of the kitchen, that little balcony, looks like there's a retaining wall that goes across, but on the elevation, it seems like there's a wrought iron. I think the wrought iron is a better choice than a retaining wall. If you look at that, you'll see it.
Could you point to that?
There's a retaining wall indicated where it's probably based on this. So I think this will allow as some sort of a break here. So this volume kind of sticks out, or this gets pushed back in rather than. So I think if the retaining wall is there, if the railing is sitting back just a couple inches, enough that the volume kind of. That may actually be a better.
Okay, so the goal would be to offset
it gives a.
Offset the plane of this projecting
Yeah, because
area
I
over the
think
garage
what's happening
versus
right now is that, like, we're looking at this and it's carrying over. So I think that volume, and then if anything needs to happen at the bottom of this, centering this or something, I don't know.
So pushing back the terrace a small amount?
Not necessarily, detailing it properly. I don't
Okay,
think
so
it's like a
we'll find a way to
pushing back,
detail.
it's just more of a detailing it properly.
Are we done here?
Are we covering the recess on the window? That's part of the conditions.
That's always standard on these, and I think he's shown it also. I'll make sure.
I agree with putting something on the bottom of that center portion, stone, or finding it more. I also, a comment, you've got several balconies, and we see this in a lot of projects. The balconies are 3.5 feet. They're not usable balconies, and this one's 3.5 feet. So if, I would just suggest they might increase, take the kitchen back or the rooms back a little bit to have a usable balcony if you're going to build one.
Is it consideration?
Yeah. And then I just want to make sure on the oak trees, I keep coming back to this, the two in the front that are remaining, there's going to be this lot of grading, this large house, so the water that's used to coming down the hill and addressing these trees may be diverted so that some watering capacity be installed where the oak trees are. And that the front area has some landscaping that's indigenous to planting under oaks, because as it's shown, you're going to have the retaining walls and just dirt and the oak trees for the whole front yard. So I think we need some planting in there.
And that's under the oaks? I missed that.
Right, like along the front, there's, you see right
Like a
along here
parkway.
and around the walls, this is all going to be just dirt when it's done.
Right.
Okay.
So I think we need some planting, but make it planting that works with the oak trees. Otherwise, I agree with the other comments.
Do we know what the garage door material is? I didn't see it here.
Have to reopen.
Okay. Mr. Hagopian,
Garage door?
could you tell us what the garage door material is?
Okay. Well, what we can do is With the new redesign, we don't know the material of the front entry door, and just to make sure that we understand, we'll make sure that the front entry door and the garage are appropriate materials.
Okay.
Put that as a condition to include that on the drawings.
Put bubblers. You put bubblers around.
I don't think you need to unless you want.
They have to be delivered. Do reports. That's what I was asking. If there are no more discussion, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the project with a
Because you now have the responsibility of the conditional use permit also, we need a first motion to approve the grading that goes over the 1,500. I'm wrong?
No, we
Sorry.
did we did
I
that.
think we did
But
that.
don't they need
We
to,
did that.
they already signed that? I know, but don't they need to make a find, or,
That's for the environmental.
Motion on the environment.
okay, I am wrong.
We could do it just to
Apologize.
cover all the bases.
They actually need to address, there is no conditional use permit requirement, yet the finding, well, I should say, the items that would have been considered as part of the conditional use permit are now under the purview of the design review board. So those items need to be taken under consideration by you as the design review board. The items in question now would be the environmental, which is a mitigated negative declaration.
And that's already been adopted.
Which has already been adopted. In this case, you just acknowledge it again, and then you make your decision for the
Right.
design review
But
board.
but they need to say out loud that
They've taken into consideration
Right.
the items.
Mhm.
The findings under section 30.
So who's willing to say that? State.
Well, why don't you give us
30.11.040.
I think
Seems
Vilya's
like
really
we're
going to be
getting-
great with that, and then I'll come back with the conditions. Give them some
Do I-
recommended language for.
And then give us a,
Well,
You could just say you
essentially,
rep-
you've taken under consideration the
Environmental.
After considering the environmental
After-
document, you approve the project with the following conditions.
correct.
I didn't even
Okay.
get that.
I'll make a
Pardon?
motion
Because our
after
new board
considering the
member doesn't have
environmental
that.
documents. and Find it acceptable.
This was the original environmental initial study and monitoring program, but again, it was
Let our council.
adopted and a
Review
resolution
this.
was signed by our chair at the last meeting.
Oh, so we did.
We did
It
we
was-
identify that.
All you're doing is just acknowledging it. You don't
you're
need
just
to adopt
acknowledging
it.
we're acknowledging we
We-
did this before.
But then yeah, so
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'll make a motion with the acknowledgement of the environmental document to approve the project with the conditions.
And would you like me to read the conditions back?
Sure.
Okay, we have a condition to add landscaping against the rear retaining wall to soften its appearance. A condition that the member sizes for all rafters and other elements at the front balconies. Well, actually, this condition is about making sure that the rafter dimension of the front balcony is consistent with the dimension of the posts at those balconies. We have a condition to find a way to address the mass or the space between the window above the garage door opening and the garage door opening itself, using either raising of the stone and introducing an appropriate architectural element or something else the architect can devise. We have a condition to change the roof tile from one-piece to two-piece. We have a condition to get a railing detail that provides a detail that's a railing that wouldn't be too ornate, but will still retain appropriate detail. We have a condition to detail the area where the left balcony interfaces with the center bay to provide more definition at that area. We have a consideration to enlarge the balconies to make them more usable, increase their depth. We have a condition to irrigate the oak trees at locations where water will be diverted to ensure they're appropriately watered. We have a condition, sorry, I'm sounding kind of repetitive with that, condition to landscape the areas at the front to avoid having excessive amounts of bare earth, but something that will also work with the oak trees. And finally, we'll make sure that we have cut sheets for the garage and the front door to make sure that the materials and the appearance are appropriate to the style of the project.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
This would be a motion to approve with conditions. And again, the environmental was acknowledged. Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Chairperson Palmer?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0, approved with conditions.
We have two sets of minutes to approve from August 28th. Three of us were here, so we could approve those if you all agree.
Madam Chair, I'll move, make a motion to approve August 28th.
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Board Member Malikian, a second by Board Member Mardian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
I have a second group of minutes from September 11th when we were all here. Somebody want to?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 11th.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Board Member Mardian, a second by Board Member Charchian. In terms of roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
We'll move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Put
Thank
this
you.
in one of those